Howdy, ho, 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 my good humans. How are you all doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I'm Brandon Sylvia, joined by Loon, as always, in the building. How are you, my brother?
It's been a slow week.
Yeah,
A slow week because of what we've played. I think you probably feel the same way.
yeah, yeah. Both of my games are about as slow as you get, and news-wise, really kind of it matches that 100%. Not a whole lot to talk about here in the world of video game and news either, but we do have one big topic of discussion being Hellblade 2 this week. I know that did you end up finishing that?
Yeah,
You
because
did?
yeah, I wanted to make sure that we were on like even footing, and yeah, obviously I'll give my opinions on it a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I guess we can go ahead and thank you all for joining us. To like, subscribe, all that good shit if you feel so inclined to. But I guess we can go ahead and start there because I am kind of curious your takeaway after beating the game. And I guess I'll go ahead and start with to set the expectation. I didn't like the first game, and Hellblade 2 is a lot more of the first game, just with a bigger budget, kind of prettier version of that first game with like somehow less combat mechanics and less sort of gameplay mechanics in general in the sequel than the original, which I found bizarre. But yeah, safe to assume if I didn't like the first game, I don't really like this one either. It's one of the best looking games on the market right now, bar none. No doubt about it. We'll never take that away from it. I think if you can really, really get into this world, you could probably have some investment in the characters and the story. I am a believer that games with games where the actual moment to moment is actively bad, it takes me out of the story, like drastically pulls me out of the story. And that's kind of my big takeaway here with Hellblade 2 is like I didn't want to play the game so much that it felt like the story was kind of going in one ear and out the other because I was just so disinterested in the core mechanics of the game. And I'll kind of leave my thoughts there for the time being and kick it to you, Loon. What are your big takeaway thoughts after finishing Hellblade 2?
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
I really didn't enjoy it, and it's funny because you said about it being taken out from the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's on average about between a 5 to 7 hour game if you're going for all the collectibles. It clocked me in at 15 hours of playtime
Mine
because I
was
sat in the pause menu for so long because I went and did anything else.
yeah.
Oh, does the washing need doing? Okay, pause. I'll get up. I'll go do that. I really just wasn't invested in it. It was so boring and so it just dragged. It really
Yeah.
did just drag.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I pause all my games all the time because I work from home and I'm having to, take calls and answer emails, this, that, and the other. And so I'll pause my game oftentimes for an hour at a time. And some games it'll show in the stat counter that that time doesn't add up. And this one it
Mm.
does. So mine says like 13 hours as well, which I believe it took me 6 hours to finish or something like that.
Yeah, I'd probably say it took me about 5. It felt like an eternity, but it was 5.
That's a surprising thing too, where it's such a short game, but it felt like it needed to be shorter to cut
Yeah.
out a lot of the fluff, a lot of the filler. It felt like it needed to be shorter. And the thing instantly, like this happened, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the game, where you get your first puzzle. And it's the same thing as the first game, lining up the little angle that looks like a Y and a K and a T and like finding this in the environment. I'm like, wait, y'all brought that back? How did that not get cut? That was like the unanimous criticism that I heard from every reviewer upon Hellblade 1's release was like the
Yep.
puzzles suck. And they all make their way back. Now, we'll be fair, they're much less intrusive to the overall experience. You're not having to like wrap around big sections and come back and like do loop de loop. So it's less But that's the thing.
They've streamlined it, but it's still there. So
Yeah.
they've cut out a little bit of the fat of the backtracking aspect of it, but it's just not enjoyable. Like, period. It doesn't matter how much you cut of it and try and make it streamlined. It's just not fun to do.
Well, and it's like you look at Quantic Dream, you look at, Telltale and these other modern adventure game makers, even, Sam Barlow with the FMV games and um you look at a lot of these experiences and you're like, I wonder why did you need to do what you did, Ninja Theory? Like, why couldn't your game just be a story? Like, why couldn't you have just removed the puzzles, the
Mm,
combat, and just told your story? And I think you told me this. You hit me up and was like, this is one of you were like, I don't like to be so reductive, but this is one of the few times where I feel like this really would be better just as a movie. And I think I feel
yeah.
the exact same way.
Yeah, because it doesn't. Uh, the whole audio thing with the headphones, that's cool, sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe that would be a little bit difficult to translate into a movie unless you were like, it would be best listened with headphones and stuff like that. But every other aspect of it, it just would fit into a movie and it would probably flow better as a movie because it's just not a very fun game. It really isn't. Like the thing that also really grinds my gears is they've obviously they say they've eliminated load screens and stuff, but the amount of times that you see her squeeze through cracks to try and cover that up in modern games, like you see that more and more. There's so much of it in this game, and she's so slow at getting from A to B. So then when you're making me walk at a snail's pace and then really slowly squeeze through a crack and then continue walking at a slow snail's pace because it did it back to back. You had to do that and then it made you squeeze through it and it was just like, what is going on? Like seriously, this is crazy.
Yeah, and I was thinking a lot through it. I was, playing and hearing the audio, it kind of you have like your doubt on one side, and it is cool from the evolution of the first game where now she's not overburdened by those voices and she knows how to like utilize them a little bit better. That is cool. So seeing the evolution of Senua is cool. But I thought so many times of how cool it would be to like, because often the voices they have conflicting advice.
Mm,
And I was like, man, it'd be so sick if there were certain moments where I could like side with one voice or the other voice,
mm.
save the person, kill the person, this, that,
Like
or
an
the other.
infamous, yeah, like an
Right.
infamous going one route or the other, and it would, dictate and change the story. Because it minor spoilers, I guess, they kind of allude to that
Hmm.
at one point. I don't think it makes a difference. I've not looked it up, but it didn't feel like it made any difference, the
Yeah.
choice that you get to make. So,
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I think those ideas of, it almost feels like that would highlight one of the most difficult things about that style of mental illness is that you have all these different internal, voices telling you to do one thing or the other, and then you as the still the body controlling the action having to pick which voice you rely on. Like that's actually kind of fucking scary thinking about it that way. I feel like that would really highlight, oh shit, I made the wrong decision and I I'm responsible and I'm going to be held accountable, but I'm getting such invalid advice from these different voices going on. But regardless, combat, gameplay, not a lot of it. It felt very segmented. It felt like it would go from, okay, here's your 30-minute stretch of walking and lighting torches, and then we're going to go into a 30-minute stretch of puzzles, and then we're going to go into a 15, 20-minute stretch of combat. And when it got to the combat, it was like,
it never ended.
yeah, it was just
It
one
felt like
after
it
another.
it never ended. That it was absolutely. They have that moment towards the end of the game where it's a really long combat section, and it's just again and again and again, and it's just like, all right, guys, like, your combat is not this good. You should not be shining this much light on it. And it kept going and it kept going, and it was just like, really? Like you fight only in one-on-one,
Yeah.
and you only fight it, and you're doing it, and it's the same, repetition of the combat, and it's like 12 enemies, 15 enemies that you have to end up fighting in a row.
Might be
That's
more than that, yeah.
that's crazy. That's actually crazy.
Well, and it's funny too because like it's so much less advanced than the first game, where the first game you could fight, 7, 8 enemies at one time, and you were swapping between them as you're targeting them. And you have like different, you can move to the side a little bit and do a slash. You can lunge forward and do an attack. Like you had more control over Senua in battle, whereas in Hellblade 2, it is so much more focused on, so I think they motion captured all of the combat, which you do see, and there are some dope ass moments of like really displaying how visceral and stabbing the sword through an enemy's throat and really feeling like, especially with the incredible sound design, the guttural sort of reaction that the enemies are going to have. But it all ends up being where you kill an enemy, another enemy grabs you, pulls you towards them, and then it's back to a one-on-one encounter. And there's only really two boss fights, and they're all kind of the exact same. Whereas in the first game, you had actual boss fights where you had to learn they would do some morphing attack or teleporting attack, and you would have to learn those. You would have to recognize those patterns, and like that's kind of all gone as well.
No, it's been stripped down to the bare basics, which it felt like the original game was already like a bare bones game. So it's anemic, I would go as far as saying.
Yeah.
And they even added that whole, you have that mirror thing, which is basically just a free kill when you
Right.
activate it, because the combat is so bad. They knew that it's so slow, and they're throwing so many enemies at you, and there's like 3 to 4 enemy types. There's like the fire breather, like I hated fighting that of all of them. He was the
That was
most infuriating. That was the one I'd save the mirror for, and I wouldn't have to
same.
interact with him. And it's just baffling because that mirror wouldn't exist if he was designed differently and the combat was better. That was solely put in there because they were like, all right, we need something to like get people through this. If we're gonna throw 15 of them, 15 enemies, and 2 of them are gonna be the fire breathers, and that second one kills them, they have to redo the whole section
Yeah.
again.
It it's a disappointment for, well, it's not really a disappointment for me. I don't really know if I had any expectation for it other than I didn't like the first game, so I kind of expected I wouldn't like the sequel. The only weird thing is like, this was, and it is a showpiece, but it felt like this was supposed to be something really, really special.
Mm.
And it just it's just not to me. And I don't mean to say like, oh, it had to be some epic blockbuster, because I don't think that is true, where games have to be, 30 hours to warrant their value or whatever. And I don't, that's, we both talked about like it felt like somehow 6 hours was too long. And so it's like I don't really know. I feel like you could have cut out 3 hours of this game that was just filler.
Yeah, you wouldn't have missed anything because
Yeah.
it feels bad to keep part. The story didn't go anywhere either. You could literally take out chunks of the story and you would have the same experience because it just feels completely drawn out. And oh my God, the thing that baffles me the most is that, again, I guess light spoilers, but it's the only thing they showed in the trailer is that like big epic
Oh
encounter
my
on the beach.
God.
What the fuck was
Press
that?
A, press A 3 times. What?
That was it. That was, so you're telling me I'd say there's probably like 2 to 3 moments of like, this is kind of epic. That was the thing that you cut out of the game to put in the trailer, and that's like your big pull because it felt like, okay, if it's gonna be like that, blood pumping the whole game, then yeah, sure, it might make it more bearable, but it wasn't. You get to that section like at the fourth hour, and it's over like that.
Yeah.
Like the trailer segment of it is that whole section.
Yes, the entire thing.
That's baffling to
Because
me.
I was actually capturing, video of gameplay for it, and I was trying to, keep spoilers to a minimum. And it came to that moment, and I was like, well, I guess I'll capture this and throw it into the B-roll because, like, it that's the entire thing that was shown at the Game Awards is like one of the first big reveals for Hellblade 2. So I was like,
Mm,
I guess this can go in here, even though it's like really right at the end of the game. Okay, I'll throw that in there. I will say, and like, we're not going to spoil anything, just we'll avoid specifics, but the moment where you're having to hold on to those little rails and the waves are like overtaking you, that was pretty fucking sick. Just from a visual, like the fidelity of it, seeing the waves, kind of like seeing Senua underwater. And like there was something epic feeling about that. The one where you're having to break the chains with the volcano, sort of
yeah,
like
that was cool.
yeah, there's a couple of those cool moments that feel epic. It does kind of have a little bit more of that Tomb Raidery-esque. Okay, I got to take off and run as this world's kind of collapsing in on itself. I love that epic scale that was added here. My only thing is like for me the best moment of the first game was it's a moment where this like house is burning down and you're having to figure out how to escape, and it's like this environmental puzzle that involves you frantically running around. The voices are telling you different directions where you should probably go. One's telling you the right way, one's telling you the wrong way. Maybe they're both telling you the wrong way, maybe they're both telling you the right way, and you're having to deal with all of this
Yeah.
while trying to escape. And that felt like suffocatingly just hopeless, and you fail multiple times until you figure it out, or at least I did. And I loved that one little puzzle. That was the only puzzle in the entire game that I liked, and it didn't feel like they recaptured that, like that feeling of what the fuck am I supposed to do? But not in a boring way. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm frantic, I'm panicking. Like they didn't really recapture that in any way. The combat is super simple, super easy on the normal difficulty. The all the puzzles are very, very bare bones compared to the first game, which once again, I appreciate that for the most part because a lot of those puzzles were god awful in the first game. So just minimizing it, I'm all for it. But there wasn't really anything in this game that like recaptured the horror of the first game, in my opinion.
Mm. Well, no, like when you scale back, because I didn't finish the first game, I thought it was a drag, just like this one. But obviously, knowing that we were going to talk about it, I pushed through it. But them scaling back the puzzles, you then need to add something else in and improve the game in other aspects, and it just didn't. Like, it's visually stunning, but the best way I can describe it is it just feels like a tech demo. That is it.
Yeah.
It feels like a tech demo. It shows you the capabilities of Unreal Engine 5 as to what it can look like, but it's all flash and no substance. That is it.
Loon, that's actually a really good point because when I was thinking about it, and I'm thinking about the Order 1886 and Rise Son of Rome and these games that were like launch titles for last generation, or even oh damn, the Medium
Mm,
that came out, early in this generation. Like those games utilized the technology, showed off what these new systems were capable of, but we're 4 years into the console life cycle. Whereas if this came out in 2020 alongside the Series X, it's like, oh shit, it shows off the power of the console. But we've already got games like, Plague Tale and Horizon and Forza Horizon and Ratchet. And like we have games that show off the technology. So we need something more than just a game that shows off the technology. at this point. And but to your point once again of Unreal Engine 5, I was thinking while playing this, like The Witcher 4, Unreal Engine 5. Imagine if an RPG could look like 70% as good as this.
Mm.
Whoo!
The thing is, though, it makes me worry because this took them 5 years to put this out
Right.
for such a short experience. So if you're then going to be using this for a massive open world, what are we never seeing the next Witcher game for like another 15 years? Like
Right.
that's the worry, that's floating over a lot of people's heads in the industry right now. It's their inability to get things out in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I do not disagree, man. Um, let's see. Going through my notes to see if I have anything else worth mentioning here for Hellblade 2. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it on Hellblade 2. I I think that the big takeaway, okay, it's on Game Pass. If you have Game Pass, definitely check it out. Just
Mm,
even to check out the first hour to see like, oh my God, this is a beautiful, beautiful game. And I mean, if you enjoyed the first game, you'll love Hellblade 2. I just didn't mean nor I you didn't like the first game either. So like
yeah.
we just kind of come into this somewhat knowing we're probably not going to like the sequel a ton. We were hopeful that there would be the improvements, enhancements that would make us really gravitate towards the sequel, but it just wasn't there. But if you liked the first game, you'll like Hellblade 2. I have no doubt about that at all. If you've enjoyed the first game, definitely worth recommending. Checking out the second, especially if you're on Game Pass. For me, it's like a solid 6.7 something, 6.7 out of 10, 6.8 out of 10. I do think that if you're talking about, character models, top tier, audio design, top tier, just motion capture, facial animation, like on the technical side of things, it's an immaculate game. It's an immaculate, immaculate game. But what's going to make me stick with the game is always going to be, you know, some sort of fun mechanics. And it doesn't, once again, it doesn't necessarily have to be combat that I'm talking about as the fun driving mechanic, like Norco, or we talked about Quantic Dream, Telltale. Like there are these adventure style, quote unquote, walking sims or whatever you want to call it, where they'll have something that's like, oh shit, that's really interesting, and it carries Soma. These games that carry the whole experience with a couple unique twists to their gameplay fundamental like mechanic that carries it through. And Hellblade 2 just didn't really have that for me. So yeah.
What was your rating? Did
I'd
you
say
say?
it's 6.7, I think, maybe 6.8 max.
I think mine would probably be in the low fives, to be honest,
Ooh.
because there was no gameplay at all that I thought this is like good. This is engaging. I'm enjoying this. Like it was really really boring. The puzzles I didn't care for. It's solely being driven by the way it looks, and for me that's just not good enough
Yeah. No, I mean it's
because you can't have As Dusk Falls as a game that does like adventure things and it's doing a better job with quick time events than your game is doing with like moment to moment real gameplay. That's criminal.
and As Dusk Falls is hideous. So it's like
Yeah.
it's it goes to show you that adventure games can work and it doesn't have to solely rely on visual fidelity like a Detroit Become Human or like a Hellblade 2. Um my thing, I'll say I was impressed enough by the motion capture animation, the just seamlessness in battle, some of the stuff with Hell or with Senua where she would be interacting with new characters, which is new for the series or new, it's not really a series, but a new feature that was introduced for the sequel where she's interacting with characters and she has the voices and they're telling her two different things while talking to a character.
Yeah.
That's really interesting just to think about from a psychosis perspective, where it's like, oh, wow, I can imagine how difficult that is when you're in conversation with another human and you have multiple of yourself inside your own head telling you different things of, oh, you can't trust them, or no, he seems fine. And it's like, fuck, that is actually really, and I thought the journey, even though I wasn't totally invested in it, I thought the journey was interesting from a base setup level. And I won't spoil anything, but like forming alliances that you kind of don't expect initially and
Mm,
seeing how those play
yeah.
out. At least base for I don't think it went anywhere all that interesting, but base formation, kind of base story setup, sure, I could get on board with that. But yeah, I think just technical powerhouse of a game, that alone would elevate it somewhere in the sixes for me. But yeah, it definitely fails to give you anything, in my opinion, worth like there's nothing in terms of what I did with my hands in this game that really stands out to me as like a holy shit, that was so fucking awesome, or even a holy shit, that was such a gut punch. Like there's not that holy shit moment really anywhere other than the tech.
Yeah, the closest thing to it was just I didn't understand the conclusion either. Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything. It
Right.
just was like, that's the ending.
Right.
What? So I
Yeah.
even sent you a message. I was like, that was it.
Well, and that's the perfect tie. We'll just sort of I know we're talking about what we're playing, but I think this fits really well here. According to Jez Gordon from Windows Central, the next Ninja Theory game has already been greenlit. And this is not talking about Project Mara, since that was already, greenlit a few years ago. And Jez goes on to say that there's no plans on closing the studio for Ninja Theory. Microsoft has no plans on closing the studio, which, you know, I don't even really want to speak about that stuff because it kind of feels gross to even speculate, but I will say I I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in that Microsoft has no plans on closing the studio. I don't think anybody would have any idea if Microsoft had any plans on closing the studio except like the high up executives
Mm.
at Xbox and Microsoft. I don't think that's something that they just hand out to journalists like, "Hey,
I
we
I can say with certainty that there's not going to be another studio closure this year. This feels like something that's going to be just looked upon on a yearly basis. They've done their closures this year, and it's just now do what you need to do to fix that. If you're still in the same position this time next year, then we axe two more studios, three more studios, whatever it was. That's what it feels like to me.
yeah, yeah, yeah." It's I think Ninja Theory is a fantastic studio with a fucking excellent pedigree of excellent games, Enslaved and Heavenly Sword, and they've made great games in the past that highlight how talented these developers are at creating great combat systems. And it's just like, how did we get to where we are? And I will say I have been listening to a lot of the interviews with I believe the creative director, and like he went on Skill Up's podcast, he went on Kind of Funny, and all he talks about is, the storytelling, the gameplay facilitating the story, talks a lot about like uh video games merging with academia. And it's like
Hmm.
I listen, I don't know the guy. I'm not trying to disparage the dude, but it seems like just that vision of trying to create this highbrow art, like I, you can do that. Like I think, when you look at The Last of Us and you look at certain other games, like you can pull it off and still make fun gameplay. But I don't think that your driving goal, because he said something like he was awarded some academic award, and that was like more of an honor to him than receiving like, actual game awards. And I was just like,
Yeah,
huh,
that's not what you should be saying as the head of a game studio.
yeah,
That should be zipping your mouth shut. Because then, if that's the case, you should be go make a film festival thing.
Right.
They do like little short movies and stuff. Because as you mentioned, like The Last of Us and stuff have kind of bridged that. You go back even further. Look at Metal Gear Solid 2.
Right.
Like, it had extremely lengthy cutscenes and stuff, and it kind of got a little bit flamed for that, but it never, when you got back to the gameplay, was stellar. That was just an addition to it. It was an extension of the game. So this doesn't feel like an extension of anything. This feels like it's getting in the way big time for me
What?
personally.
So let's, hypothetically speaking, they their next game has supposedly been greenlit. That's not Project Mara, which Project Mara seems to be more of like a horror game. What do you want to see Ninja Theory do next? I mean, obviously, we both know. I think we can say confidently we don't want a Hellblade 3.
That's the
What?
thing, though. That's the thing. I was open to Hellblade 2 if they used it as a jumping point
Yep,
because it was the when they marketed it, it was what was it? The first independent AAA is what it was said to be
yep.
and stuff like that. So it felt like, okay, that's your concept design. This is your way. This is your like your moment of execution then. Because I saw a lot of people floating around ideas like, they could have made it more in line with like the new God of War reboots and stuff like that and expanded it out. Because you can easily add puzzles. Look at God of War has puzzles in its in its world where you're exploring through. So if you wanted to do them puzzles and just have it be a nice big open map of, you know, one of the northern lands and stuff like that, or even in line with like a Last of Us, but it just isn't. Because that's what kind of gave me a little bit of hope is that seeing that stuff that they showed at the trailers, it looked like a game when they were doing that beach section, but it's just
Yep.
so it's like over and done in 10 minutes, if that. So, you know, he's so driven in that vision that he wants to make the movie thing. I don't think I'd want to see a Hellblade 3, no, unless he was doing an actual make a fucking game for Christ's sake. But this is a team that's delivered, like you said, they've delivered Enslaved Odyssey, they've done Heavenly Sword,
DMC.
and they got a little bit of flack for doing DMC, but it was still a great game. It just wasn't good for DMC fans because they were a little bit disrespectful with the source material. So like yeah, like a spectacle fighter, I'd be down to see that. So like a DMC take, I would be absolutely down to see something like that. It baffles me that when Scalebound kind of fell flat, why didn't they get given that project? They could easily have continued on. They have the pedigree and capability.
That's
That
a
was one of like
fantastic idea.
the most hot things Xbox fans were looking forward to. It was like, this is like interesting, and it just fizzled out.
That is a very, like, I have not even thought of that. That is a fantastic idea to sort of return back to, you don't have to name it that or whatever, but to return back to that style of game,
Mm,
character action, but because you really don't see that in fantasy, it's much more methodical style of combat usually in fantasy games. But to
mm,
return, like to go to something that's crazy, action oriented, fast, bombastic, battling these dragons, but you have DMC Bayonetta style flow to the combat, that'd be
yeah.
so crazy.
Well, because you
Um,
had in the was it Bayonetta 3 or 2 that come out on Switch that had like the massive monster inclusion things?
uh,
Or am I completely
Bayonetta 3,
misremembering? Yeah,
Bayonetta 3, where you could
like the
play as the
kaiju
monsters. Yep,
things. Yeah.
yep, Bayonetta 3.
If the Switch can handle it, for Christ's sake, you can integrate that in on an Xbox. Have you battling with these dragons and shit,
Yeah.
and then have it transition to on the ground moment to moment in like a DMC style thing. That would be so damn good of a game.
I had a weird thought, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is Hellblade 2 Xbox's first game that they've like that they've put out from their acquired teams, meaning like the first one that they funded had full oversight, you know, full oversight on the project from start to finish. Because Starfield was in development for a couple years before the acquisition. Psychonauts was near complete. Hi-Fi
Mm,
Rush, I think, entered development and I think like right after The Evil Within 2. And so I started thinking, I was like,
maybe some
uh,
of the smaller stuff like
yeah,
Pentiment,
Pentiment. Yep, yep,
maybe.
yep.
But I get what you're getting at. Like, is this one of the bigger budget first ones and stuff like that? And I think it is. And if it's really not instilling much confidence, if I'm being honest.
I'll give them a win on this in terms of for me. I'll give them a win on this as like overseeing this title and having it stay true to because I think this is a Ninja Theory issue. I really do. I
Mm,
think this is truly what that I forget his name. I think it's Don something or Tom, I forget, but I think that was the studio's vision from the top was to create this super artsy like but ultra realistic style of experience. But I started thinking about it. I was like, I maybe, and listen, Xbox deserves to be crucified for a number of things, but I think I am going to give them a little bit of rope if this next slate of games deliver, because this next slate of games, like, I think all these are real Xbox games, like fully funded, fully oversaw by Xbox from inception to release. Avowed, Clockwork, South of Midnight, Indiana Jones, maybe Doom, depending on how soon that releases. And so, like, those I think are the real Xbox games from those acquired studios from, 2019 and beyond or 2018 and beyond.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think we have about 2 years left of really seeing the fruits of this labor and seeing if they can turn it around. Obviously, the Tango thing, that's a massive red flag for all these studios. But I think you know, we'll extend that wiggle room until these next batch of games come out and see if, Xbox really can deliver.
Yeah, I was willing to give like fairly reserved judgment until at least Avowed
Yeah,
because not to that's not something Obsidian probably would have wanted to make if they had the choice of continuing the series in its traditional sense. If they had the option, Microsoft was like, you can do this or this, and we will give you full reins and stuff, and you have no expectations and whatever. It feels like they would have gone with what they were really enjoying the way that that was going. So that definitely feels like a Microsoft coming in and being like, you clearly love the series, but you can't make them in this vein. They just don't sell. So you need
right.
to modernize it like big time. So if it even hits equal to the Outer Worlds, I think that's a win for them.
Well, let's stay right there. We're kind of hopping around everywhere on this episode because there's a lot of it's very Xbox centric. Xbox always got shit going on. I mean, biggest publisher in the world. So Avowed and Indiana Jones will be playable at Summer Games Fest, according to Insider Gaming. And so this is right around the corner. These games are going to be playable, preview builds, hands-on coverage. We're going to get some real insight. And, previews are always more, if you look back at the Redfall previews, a lot of those were glowing. And that didn't turn out too well. So previews, you always got to take with a grain of salt. You're getting early access coverage. Usually, you look at Hellblade previews, we're glowing. Preview coverage is usually very, very light on the criticism, but we can actually finally get real information on these games. And it looks like I was wrong about Avowed. If this thing's going to be playable in June, it's probably going to release by the end of 2024. And I
Yeah,
wasn't really expecting that.
yeah, no, Obsidian are the masters of just getting shit out. Like I've always said it's like a running joke with them. Don't give them time. It sounds horrible. When you give them time, they fuck up big
Yeah.
time because they're so creative and they have so many ideas they want to put in. They never get any work done. Whereas and that's what happened with Alpha Protocol. That's why it was such a mess in comparison to everything else that they put out, is because Sega was so leaned back with them and were like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then when they finally checked in, they were like, you spent how much on an opening cinematic? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you tighten their leash and are like, look, man, you need this, it's coming out this year and you're hitting this deadline, they really get the ball rolling and 100% expect it to be buggy at launch. Because that is what happens with Obsidian games a lot of the time, is when they're given that tight deadline and they're not allowed to push it back, it will be a little bit rough. So I think it's going to be very, very deliberate, selected slice,
Oh yeah.
as you would expect, to make the game shine as much as it possibly can. But that I reckon is going to be very, very wobbly at launch, and it's probably going to take till about February until you see like big sweeping patches to make it stable.
Well, let's stay on that. You know, Avowed and Indiana Jones gonna be playable in a couple weeks. We're gonna get preview coverage from, select outlets. What is the one thing you want to hear? You can take it either which way, or start with Avowed. What is the one thing you want to hear from this preview coverage about Avowed? I'll go ahead and I'll throw you mine. Give you time to think about it for a second. I want to hear, and I want to hear something close to this specifically. I want to hear it feels good to play, but looks silly. Because that's something when I saw that gameplay earlier in the year, I was like, I feel like this could actually feel kind of crunchy with your hands on it, but it just looks so floaty and light and silly and goofy. Like, but that doesn't matter if it feels good.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I want to hear about Avowed. The one thing I want to hear about Indie is that you get tons of third person cutscenes.
I think my like I've this is the difference between having like a fanboy head on with like a series. I'd be just more interested in knowing how much they've respected the law for Avowed specifically.
Yeah.
I want the combat to be a little bit more clean. It did look a bit rough. Is
Yeah.
the nicest way of putting it. The character models didn't bother me, to be honest.
I don't care about that.
But I played so many Eurojank games. Character models really don't phase me. A lot of people like shredding the lip sync and stuff, and that doesn't really bother me. But yeah, like combat really needs to feel clean. And I'm not even gonna lie about indie. I don't. There's no way they mess it up.
Yeah.
Machine Games has never dropped the ball. They've never released anything buggy. It's always felt really crisp. Like gameplay, cutscenes, everything, animation, like everything has just been stellar from them.
Well, and
It's
it
why
seems
it kind of it's crazy that's a Bethesda studio because
right.
them and it fucking knock it out of the park, and then you kind of have like their little favorite section of the Fallout teams and stuff, and they're just so bad at getting things polished.
Yeah, well, it seems like Machine and id by comparison make much more simplistic games, and not like in an insulting manner, but like they know what they do best and they do that.
Yep.
Whereas like BGS, they got like 900,000 things that they're trying to do simultaneously, and usually it comes out where none of it is really excellent. Um, but staying right there, Doom. This is from Tom Henderson over at, once again, Insider Gaming. He tweeted out soon, June, boom, dot dot dot, doom, question mark.
Yeah.
I so it's been leaked a while ago that Doom was going to be at the show. I don't think that's surprising anyone. Does this mean anything more than that? Like, does this possibly mean that
Shadow
Doom?
drop.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I don't know necessarily about Shadow Drop. I would hope you would market Doom, especially after you didn't market Hi-Fi Rush and then close the studio. Like, but
To be
is it?
fair though, rolling it back a bit, they really heavily undermarketed Doom Eternal. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-mm.
In the lead up to it, not only like giving it spotlight when it was at when it was at shows and you had preview hands-on experience with it, they gave people 40 minutes to an hour of Wolfenstein Youngblood and then 15 minutes of Doom Eternal, which made people think, all right, this Doom Eternal is going to be really bad then. Like, why are they giving such small? And it wasn't. It was the complete opposite. Like, Doom Eternal kicked ass.
Hmm.
It was such a strong game, but they didn't give it any, spotlight. It was very, very bizarre, and it was just like, why are you shining so much on Youngblood for? Because that was a big bomb in comparison.
I was looking at sales and like Doom Eternal, I think sold like 10 million copies. That's
Game's amazing.
insane.
Yeah.
So it's looking like Doom is definitely going to be at the show. Will it release this year? I mean, that's the thing is Xbox, they are setting themselves up for a pretty fucking big year already. You know what I mean? Avowed and Indie, because like that was the thing. I thought Avowed was going to get delayed out of 2024. And then okay, it doesn't look like that crazy of a year at that point. But now Avowed, Starfield Shattered Space, Indiana Jones, Towerborn, Flight Sim 2024. Like, does Doom even what the fuck? Where does it go?
Um, I mean, we joked about it getting shadowed. There's no way it gets shadow dropped. This feels perfect for like a February release of next year. Get in
Perfect.
early. Don't go head to head with GTA. Get this preview out now because then you can get it down on the floor, get people buzzing around it, show it again at the Game Awards as it closes out the year, and then just be like, give the release date at the Game Awards and be like, yeah, February release, boom, easy. If it's that
Yeah,
far along. And to be fair, like, what was it? Doom Eternal came out in when the pandemic was at like its height.
2020, yeah.
So if they were able to get that much done under them conditions, it feels like they got their shit together over there. Clearly, it's been 4 years now.
Well, yeah.
Definitely on the horizon.
Well, and that's the thing. Doom 2016, that was, the reboot or whatever you want to call it, and then Doom Eternal 2020, and now we're 2024, so 4 years on each.
Yeah,
Like, it kind of makes sense. So if it does slip to 2025,
perfect.
yeah,
It's the perfect turnover as well because I know you've not really touched upon them. You've said
nah,
they're really short and sweet and really intense. So you get like your fill in for like 6 to 8 hours roughly, and then you're like, wow, that was really good. And then you can just kind of forget about it for a bit. And now that 4 years has passed, you're like, yeah, man, I'm craving for more of this. It's the
yeah,
perfect like amount of time. Like you wouldn't want to see this a yearly thing. It would get very dry and stale. So this output is incredible from them.
yeah. I think that's the thing this year for me is like, I am just at this point because I thought about going back and playing through them before the new one. I don't know what's happening right now. I cannot stick through a game. Like I cannot stick through anything that I'm playing. I did finish Hellblade and Indika, but if I'm being real, that was a lot more about the show and covering them on the show than it was
Yeah,
about like really enjoying it and wanting to see it through. So I was like, I'm not in the mindset or in the mind space to really appreciate games for what they are. And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna scale back and make sure that when that new Doom comes out and when some of these other games come out, I'm able to like fully dial in and appreciate those games for what they are, opposed to like overburdening myself with trying to go back to a bunch of different shit. So I will be checking out Doom Year Zero, whatever they call it, the day it drops. Be there day one. I'm assuming it'll be on Game Pass, so I shall be
yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Um, Sticking here in Xbox land, we'll go ahead and cover everything. New Xbox is looking like it will arrive in 2026, the new next gen box of X. A new claim from a Call of Duty data miner suggests that the new Xbox console could launch as soon as 2026. The console would also feature that year's Call of Duty as a launch title. Hearing from trusted sources that the next Xbox is planned to be released in late 2026, the Ghost of Hope, who's the Xbox leaker, writes, very likely that Call of Duty 2026 is a day one release for it. Call of Duty 2026 is being developed by Infinity Ward. It's also worth noting that Ghost of Hope has sources within Activision, which could be where his information is coming from. And that was a write-up by Insider Gaming as well. So, Loon, next gen box of X is coming 2026, possibly. Think that's a good play?
Yeah, because it's rumored PlayStation probably isn't putting anything out to what 2028 at the earliest is what it's kind of floating around them numbers.
Yep.
And you look at one of the big reasons the 360 was so successful is because it had a head start.
Yep.
It was only, I think it was shorter than 2 years. It was only a year, right?
It was a year. Yep. 2005.
So, especially in this landscape where gaming moves so much quicker than it did back then, 2 years is such a big head start to the point where maybe that 2028 turns into a 2027 if they start getting traction and applying pressure to Sony. But
Yeah.
regardless, any amount of time that they can get out ahead of Sony is what they need right now. They need to seriously utilize this, have that COD be a launch title, so that'll be an October, November release along with the console. Tie something down that you can only do on a next gen system with Call of Duty. Utilize that. Give it a bell and a whistle, and that is the way you would rake in players because then Call of Duty players that will see that on PlayStation are like, okay, I really like playing this game every year, and you're gating off something from me. That will be enough to bring them over because you say some people will say no, there's no way you're in that established ecosystem. We already saw this happen when they announced the when you got map packs back in the day, like 1 month early. That was enough for people to jump ship and go to PlayStation and stuff. Like it really you people forget that these people only play this one game.
Yep.
So if they can play it better somewhere else, that's all they care about. And now that your account can be pulled from PlayStation to it, they're not missing out on anything. They don't care
And
about trophies. So yeah, go on.
another game that is a one and done for a lot of people?
GTA.
Did you see that comment in our comment section? That I thought that was really fucking wise. It was from a user by the name of Plummy or Plummies, saying that they believe GTA 6 might be a launch title with the new Xbox because we learned recently that GTA 6 is going, it's scheduled, or it's not scheduled, it is believed to be a fall 2025 release, which is believed to be by me a 2026 release. So if this is where you play Grand Theft Auto 6 the best by far,
Yep.
I mean, that is a humongous deal for Xbox. If they can somehow whip up that black magic to line all these cards up perfectly, whew.
It it would be there's two major factors that would have that pull in. Is that if they are targeting a 2025 and it gets delayed, that's just fortune on Xbox's side because then it would be a lot easier to convince Rockstar to be like, okay, if you were going to target like an August for that year, push it back just a few months and have it as a launch title and stuff like that.
Yep.
If they are actually on track to hitting 2025, Microsoft is going to have to give them money under the table to be like, push it back a year.
Yeah.
Polish it up, give it a little bit more love, guys. That is the only way you convince them because Rockstar don't give a shit. They'll drop it right. They could, if it was ready to go now, they would happily drop it right now
Oh yeah.
because it will outsell anything that
This is
is going
ever
to be released
released.
in that time play. So if they're able to get that as a launch title as well, that would be the swing.
Yeah.
COD, GTA, day one. only available really on their systems to the best that
Yeah.
it can be.
If you want the best experience, you got to play on the next box, whatever the fuck,
Next box.
whatever the fuck they're gonna call it. So, if this is like a last ditch effort for the Xbox console space, which I think we would have to assume it is, that this is kind of like they have to go balls to the wall and have a 360 level success for them to continue making Xbox consoles in the future. Um, so if I'm Phil Spencer, if I'm whoever, I'm going to Daddy Damn Satya, going to Daddy Microsoft, saying, listen, drop me a budget. You tell me what the budget is, somewhere in the billions. We're going to get games. Right now, if I'm Phil Spencer, I'm contacting Take Two. Mafia 4, what do we got to pay you to get that off PlayStation? Fucking uh, staying with Take Two. I'm con because I think Madden the exclusivity license ends in 2026. I think for NFL. I'm on the phone with Take Two saying, get a team together for a simulation football game. We, Microsoft, are going to the NFL. We're going to negotiate with the NFL to make sure that NFL 2K 2026 can happen. And as soon as it's ready to happen, we want your team on the ball working on this game. We're having, an exclusive football title on Xbox. And Disney, you're going to Disney, hitting them up. Do y'all have anything Star Wars related on the horizon? Anybody you got? Do you have a team at EA, a team at Ubisoft developing a Star Wars game that we don't know about yet? We'll pay you 3 billion, 4 billion exclusive. Like just throw cash. Cause like when you think about 360, Mass Effect, Bioshock, Gears, like the games, man, it had the exclusive content early on in that console's life cycle. You got to have, when you launch this thing in 2026, it, I mean, the moment you pick this up, you need two, three, four heavy hitters, some exclusive, some third party. You need those heavy hitters available immediately.
Yeah, it worries me that with how the industry's gone, we're veering more further away from that. Because you look at you're talking about putting money down to get a little bit of exclusivity and stuff like when Square Enix is backing out of that as a strategy, and they're very willing to open their palms and stuff like that. It it would cost an unreasonable amount of money to maybe lock down anything from Take Two. Um,
Unreasonable for most.
yeah, but you look at they're shutting studios down already because of the way that they budgeted and stuff. So it would be if they went down that route, that will be an all or nothing.
But
That would be
isn't
the
it?
ultimate extreme. And the thing that I always think about is that, they get shit on a lot for being third place and stuff. But you think of how many sports teams out there on a yearly basis, they don't grow, right? They have their established fan base and it's just revenue. They spend money, they make money. They spend money, they make money. So it really should be along them. Like I get it, you don't want to be third place, but sometimes that will always be a third place if there's going to be consoles and stuff like that. So if that's what they have as a vision of wanting to stay in the console space, but that's the different thing is if they're getting out of it, it will be a different strategy altogether.
But that's kind of
And I
my
don't
thing.
know what the fuck that will be.
Right. But that's my thing is we know that they were going to close down Xbox or they were talking about it, Microsoft, in the Xbox One era. And so if it hasn't grown significantly since then, that conversation still has to be on the table at this point. So it's like if you're
But
going to do it,
they used your argument though during that time. Because during that time they had the massive exclusivity deal with FIFA in the Ultimate Team mode. They had icons exclusive to Xbox. That was a massive driving force, and it was like fairly successful to them, but they got a lot of flack for it. And then they had what do you call it? All them tied up deals with like Tomb Raider and stuff, and it didn't seem to do anything for people. So if they dropped like as you know, not saying that that's how much it would cost and that they would do that, but like even just like 1 billion just to acquire something for a year, that's a massive gamble from some people who just grit their teeth and be like, "Well, I'll just wait."
Fucking full exclusive. We got to go back to full exclusives. I don't,
That's the thing is that they're so modern in their thinking of I think they know that exclusives are the way of the dodo. That we're just going to see you can't have a closed ecosystem because of how much they cost now.
but why is it not for Nintendo then?
Because their budgets are nowhere near the amount that PlayStation and Xbox have to spend.
True.
You think any Nintendo property right now cost as much as Hellblade 2 just cost to make? Maybe the closest that you could argue for that is Breath of the Wild 2
Yeah.
would be the closest thing to that. But even then, I don't think that that had anywhere near the budget that Hellblade.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's
I
the benefit of why they get away with so much because they have a less powerful system, so they don't need to be on the cutting edge. They can still be using stuff from the past and get away with it. So they've not had to do the massive exodus of closing down studios because their budgets are nowhere near to the amount that the Sony and Microsoft are. Because we saw as well, um, it's always constantly churning around the AI debate, utilizing AI to save costs now. So they're looking at putting AI in QA. They're looking at making it so that that's going to be side quest characters, voicing NPCs and stuff like anything that they can do to cut costs and not have to pay people. That's their solution right now. They've got all their eggs in the basket of AI, and that's worrying.
yeah. Yeah, you're right. The budget thing is definitely that's the counter argument that I can't really find any dispute with that one because yeah. I mean, Sony, well, I guess you could throw God of War Ragnarok out there and stuff like that, but then the immediate argument back is that those games come to PC a year, 2 years after, so they're still getting revenue outside of their walled garden. Yeah, you're right. It's a fucking bummer, man. I love exclusives. I love them, dude. I love them so much. It makes the ecosystem so cool. And like, I just I've brought this up a million times, so I'm sorry for repeat viewers, but I just always remember looking at my cousin in his game library because he had Xbox and being like, oh shit, KOTOR and Fable and NFL Fever and WWE Raw and like all this shit that I'll never be able to play over here. And I always thought it was so cool that he had such a different experience with his system than I did with mine. And yeah, I don't know. It just
They
it bums me out that that's kind of going away.
they had their own separate identities,
Yeah.
which has completely gone out of the window now. Like Xbox was always looked at upon as the bro shooter, co-op, multiplayer. Now that that's become completely mainstream and just established as it's everywhere, they've heavily lost their identity there. And then Sony was, the big place to play JRPGs and stuff, and then they kind of shifted to modernizing themselves into doing this story-driven grizzled dad game kind of
Yeah.
section. And now we look at it and they're coming out a lot slower. It's just the industry's struggling to adapt big time.
Well, and it's like I, I kind of think that Xbox might have fucked up by trying to get away from the bro thing. Like that might
Mm.
have been their legacy that they needed to just latch onto. Because I do think the legacy that PlayStation latched onto correctly was this blockbuster premiere dad sad simulator thing. Like they found immense success with that. And Xbox found immense success with the bro shooter thing. And I don't even know if it necessarily had to be like bro shooter per se, but like even Grand Theft Auto kind of has a bro culture around it, in sports and shit. Like Xbox might should have just stuck with kind of being like a I don't know what you call it, more fratty. It kind of had that fratty vibe, and I wonder if going away from that kind of alienated that audience a little bit.
Well, it was the thing that popularized a lot of serious like four-player split screen co-op, like
Right.
competitively. Like you had obviously Nintendo where it was like, party game stuff, but like fierce competitiveness was bred on Xbox with Halo and stuff like that. And yeah, they've really just struggled adapting. I don't know how you would fix it.
Yeah.
They
What
need to do something. They need to find their new identity. That is what it is.
well, I saw a tweet from Jez Gordon where he said that 100% the uh the next Xbox will have Steam running on it. And I don't know if he's saying this in a passing manner, if it's like 100% he knows this for a fact or 100% he believes it. That's kind of the problem with like leakers and shit like that, where you
Yeah.
don't really know when they're just speaking or when they're telling you something, informing. Because Sarabon's saying that this is going to be the most ambitious console generation leap ever, or whatever that shit she threw out a while ago. And I that's impossible from a technical level. It's truly impossible at this point. But when I think about features,
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
that's what
like,
she meant.
yeah, so does that like that Steam play? Is that the
Well,
most ambitious leap?
well, think about it this way. Everything that's always been first to do it fell flat on its face, like big time. Like Nintendo trying to do virtual reality like 40, 30 years before it's even remotely viable. You had the whole Evolve thing where people pushed back on the $120 DLCs day one. That was like inconceivable, and now that's the norm nowadays. Diablo 3 at launch was always online, and that got pushed back. Now that's the norm. And the thing that I'm thinking that kind of links that together is the Steam box bombed big time. When Steam tried to get into the console market, that really, really fell flat on its face. They had no idea how to do that. They have really, really strong connections with Microsoft. It benefits both of them. Putting Steam on Xbox will draw a lot of players in for both parties, and all they need to do is find a way of cutting the profits in a healthy, sustainable manner. That is it. That's
Yeah.
all you need to agree on, and then that is, like you said, that is what would be the big, massive thing of that's never been done before. Because I'd be down for that. Give
Fuck
me my
yeah.
whole Steam library that I haven't touched in God knows how long, and then it would even be better because if you're putting Steam on that console, then you're also going to have to do 100% support for keyboard and mouse. So it's just going to be a completely open culture ecosystem, which they keep mentioning they want to do. And that would be perfect. I would be so down to play RTS games on a little box and just USB plug in a keyboard and mouse and not have to worry about fiddling around with a PC. That's a dream for me. I would be so down for that
Well,
personally.
there's like five games I've seen in the past, like Mini Shoot Adventure, 1000X something or another. There's been like seven games that's released in the past month or two that are only on PC. And I'm like, fuck, I really would like to. Robo Dunk last year, I wanted to play that so bad, and it's only on PC. And so if this could stay as a sustainable console ecosystem where it functions the way that a console should, where it's not annoying and I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna change my settings set up and I'm gonna flip the thing four times and I'm gonna tap it. Like if I don't have to do all the dumbass shit that you have to do to fucking keep up with a PC and let me upgrade my specs a little bit and drive a RAM card into the cell process. Like if I don't have to become a fucking technician, which I know PC people are looking at me like, dude, you don't have to do any of that shit. But if I can still keep it as a console, turn it on, go to Steam, download
Plug and
game,
play.
play game.
Yeah.
That's what.
Have it because they're already established that with the Steam Deck. They're already having to do that for the Steam Deck, where they have a group of people that do it for each game, because that's when it gets the certificate tick thing,
Yeah.
Steam Deck certified and stuff. So they're clearly open to the idea of having it have Steam games run on a specific set of system requirements. Pairing up with Microsoft, they've had so many teams do stuff like that. Yeah, the backwards compatibility division, which they've just brought back and stuff. What's to say you don't just divert a small number of people to make Steam games run on Xbox at this level and stuff like that? Port all them, and there you go. It's just a win-win. I don't see a way that that's in any way negative to me personally.
It would only be the only negative would be the cut if they couldn't come to a good term on the cut. But I assume at this point, if they are planning on it, that's already been agreed to. 15%, 15%, both parties. I think that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of what I would expect. Um, but yeah, you have something on that. It felt like you had a thought there.
I was trying to like kick the mind code because I can't remember what their percentage cut for Steam is at the moment. Is that
30%,
with
I
that?
think.
Is it 30%? So
I believe so.
I think they got a lot of flack for that previously. So yeah,
So just
it would
split
be
that down the
obviously
middle.
15-15. I mean, as Microsoft, like if I was Microsoft, I'd take a 10-20 cut,
Right.
like just to get that as a feature that, Steam agree to have this on our system and it's only on our system.
Yeah.
Like this as an application and as a thing never makes it to any other thing. And that would be the perfect bridging of, it's essentially a PC in a box. It would have accomplished that.
Yeah. Now you talk about
Don't give me Epic,
exclusives.
please. Don't give me Epic. I don't want Epic.
Right.
I'll take GOG though. They have a good relationship with CDPR.
What do you think they're going to name the next Xbox?
The PC box, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Maybe they
only,
just go Xbox and just,
yeah.
it's just everything and just keep it as like one brand. No stupid naming because I'm sick of them naming things. It's so crap. They have these really cool code names for it, and then it just comes out as 1X, Series X. It's just like,
I think their worst decision, one of their worst decisions, not even close. What am I saying? I think a bad decision that they made was not calling the 360, which I guess it doesn't really matter because 360 did so well, but like it should have just been Xbox, Xbox 2, Xbox 3, Xbox 4, Xbox 5. Like just fucking just because you're a number behind somebody, who gives a fuck? Like that was the reason for
yeah,
not
they just wanted to also just be creative because their
no.
whole fucking mindset of we called it the Xbox One because it was going to be the one thing in your living room. It'll be the one stop for everything. It's like, yeah, it worked out well, didn't it?
Right.
It was their one doorstop, and that was about it.
Yeah. Maybe Xbox hybrid, something like that. Like if it is going to be more of this open border kind of Steam, GOG, all this stuff available. I don't know. The name's going to be really interesting. I thought they had
Mm.
good names like Scarlet and Scorpio and all that shit that was
Exactly. Their
rumored. Yeah.
their code names are really cool, but their actual product names are ours.
Yeah. Which it's usually the other way around, right? Where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
Project Mara, but it's going to end up becoming a real cool name.
Mm.
You know, Project Eve, it ends up becoming Stellar Blade. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that is that on the old box of the X. Now let's go to the box of the P, PS. I don't know. Neil Druckman is doing some talking. Neil
Mm.
Druckman on Naughty Dog's new game. He said, "I am eager to see how this new game resonates, especially following the success of The Last of Us, as it could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. The new game is perhaps the most thrilling yet." So Neil Druckmann doing a little talking about Naughty Dog's upcoming title. Loon, I kind of worry about this, I can't lie. because I remember seeing an interview with him for, I mean, this was a while back, where he was talking about being really inspired by FromSoft and wanting to have games where
Oh
there's
yeah, I
not,
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
where it's not as much like in your face story and the story is more subtle and lore based. And I remember, I think that The Last of Us 2 initially, they said it played a lot like Bloodborne. I think this was in the latest documentary for The Last of Us 2 that PlayStation put out, where it started off a lot more Bloodborne based and like more melee. I forget all the specifics, but he seems very, very inspired by FromSoft. And I'm just like, oh brother, please God, don't
Um,
lose your way.
I mean, we see it as a genre. They're very, very popular. So it'll be very successful. But what I wouldn't want to see is don't morph one of your IPs into this. Don't create the next Last of Us as a Bloodborne. Don't do Uncharted as a Bloodborne. Create something brand new. Um, but he touched on. I'm probably going to paraphrase a little bit because I mentioned it with the AI thing. He also touched on
Yep.
that as one of the questions because he one of the things they asked were what advice would you give to like new developers coming into this space and like what do they need to learn and stuff? And he was saying about utilizing the tools as well because he said about the reason that there's going to be this really big experience, this next game for them, is because they are utilizing AI
Yeah.
and they want to do what was it? It was
I got the quote right here.
your emotions will still the feeling of it will still resonate with you once you turn the game off. Like it's going to be something that's going to be rolling around in your head hours after you've switched the game off.
Yeah. I
Something
got
along them lines.
an article right here that says Naughty Dog boss Neil Druckmann says AI will revolutionize how content is being created. Da 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 da. Let's see, get through all the fluff bullshit. All right, here's Druckmann's response in full. We're seeing the excitement. We're seeing this exciting marriage of cutting edge technology with traditional storytelling that's pushing us into a future where enhanced fidelity isn't just about achieving realism, but about broadening the spectrum from highly stylized visuals to ultra realistic ones. This broadening of possibilities is fueled by increasingly accessible tools that allow even non-technical people to use their imagination and create worlds and narratives to their heart's content. Moreover, AI is really going to revolutionize how content is being created, although it does bring up some ethical issues we need to address. With technologies like AI and the ability to do motion capture right from home, we're reducing both cost and technical hurdles, opening the door for us to take on more adventurous projects and push the boundaries of storytelling in games. This evolution is truly empowering creators to bring their vision to life without the traditional obstacles. So, is that what you were talking about there?
Yeah, yeah. And because he had mentioned something about the emotional stuff as well. I just
Okay.
can't remember where it was. It may have been a previous interview that he did. Um, but yeah, he also touches upon, when they also need to get the ethical side of it right. It's all well and good being able to work this from home, but it's also going to cost. Every time you divert somebody's job load to do something else, once you've programmed that program of AI, it only needs slight tweaking each time you need it for something else. That's somebody's job that they don't need to do. Like it may have been two, three people's jobs that now you're cutting.
Right.
And it is scary because they keep saying about the cutting edge and being on the front foot and making sure that you're pushing the experience and stuff like that. There's so much games being dropped on a monthly basis that people can't even consume it as it is at this current point. And that we're supposedly in a point where they're struggling to get them out. So if they had their shit together and they had the ball rolling constantly across the whole industry and they were at like peak effectiveness of getting games delivered, you would have even more studios then shut down because you'd have
Yeah.
more titles being dropped and even like the spread is already thin as it is. Like me and you are very, very driven at trying to get as many experiences as possible. I've still not touched probably half the games that you've touched this year. I didn't touch
Right,
Outcast, Alone in the Dark, and stuff like this because I don't have the time. And I
right.
have a lot more free time than most people. And this is what I mean. It's crazy that it's such a weird balancing act that they got to
Well,
get.
yeah, and it's so funny, like you bringing that up is such a good point because, like, when I think about it, it's like I don't watch TV, I don't watch movies, I don't have any live service game that I play, I don't have any real multiplayer game that I'm playing on a consistent basis. I'm really, and I go to my backlog a good bit, but I'm really trying to focus on mostly new games that release. And it's like the amount of people, for one, I a big part of it is I do it for the channel, but 99% of people are, and we that survey came out recently where it was like I think 80% of people who, are gamers or whatever are prioritizing games that are 6 years old or older. I
Mm,
don't remember if that's the exact number, but most people aren't buying new games as is.
yeah,
So it's like if AI does increase efficiency across the board for all these studios, the competition becomes insurmountable in a
mm,
way. Where like if you because I think there's like 10,000 or 15,000 games released each year.
yeah.
So it's like
It's an obscene amount.
how can I understand we do need to get more efficient in some ways, but like how can we how can we be polluted with more content and expect these studios to stay alive when you're competing with a new Naughty Dog game every 2 years, every 3 years? And it's tough because it's like,
The question I'll pose, would you want to actually see that though? I wouldn't want a Naughty Dog game every 2 to 3 years,
well,
personally.
when I think about the best run of Naughty Dog, it was every 2 to 3 years with Uncharted. Uncharted 1, 2008, Uncharted 2,
But they got
2000.
bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah.
So they would get bigger and bigger every 2 to 3 years if they're working at if they're all on the firing cylinders and doing everything perfectly. They always have to grow. I
Fuck,
wouldn't
I
want to
don't
see that
know.
every 2 years. Like this is why I said about earlier, like mentioning it. It's the perfect like 4 years between them Doom games is perfect. It gives you so much space to dip in and do every other thing that you want to do. And then it's a nice thing to look forward to on the horizon. Like, you know that it's going to be coming out 4 to 5 years. I think that's
Four
the
years is
perfect time
perfect.
frame. Yeah.
4 years is 3 to 4 years for me is perfect. I do think the idea of having The Last of Us 1 in 2013 and then The Last of Us 2 in 2020 is fucking stupid. Making making sequels in today's day and age of game development doesn't even make sense to me. Like, why would you ever make a sequel if it takes 7 years to get to it? It's like, who the fuck remembers the first one by the time the sequel comes out? And then you got to do this whole build up of remember da 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 da
Well,
and then
that's
this
why
and then
you
this
do a
and then.
TV show now. That's what they've found the way to bridge the gap. That's perfect. They've
Fucking A.
figured it out.
What do you want to see next from Naughty Dog though? Like, do you I kind of I don't really want The Last of Us anymore. I would like to see a part 3 at some point, but I don't think I want something lighter next for sure. I don't want some bullshit lore thing. Like I want a front-facing real story, not fucking I have to go and watch 5 hours of YouTube videos to figure out what this tree, the significance of this tree in the game is. Fucking A.
To get Elden Ring. Um, for me personally, I'm not gonna lie. Like Crash Bandicoot doesn't really do anything for me and stuff like that. Um, I didn't particularly care for like the first Jack. The second Jack game though, I really, really, really enjoyed that. I remember like the much darker tone. It kind of had like a little bit of inspiration from GTA of like its little open world stuff and
I've heard
going
that.
in cars and everything. Dude, I'd love to see like a really dark and gritty Jack reboot
That'd be so
in like
funny.
in like the vein of what we still haven't obviously seen this, but like what they were trying to accomplish with Beyond Good and Evil 2, like a dark and grittier thing, and just yeah, that something along them lines. I'd be so down for that because I don't really. Yeah, you could do Uncharted again, I suppose, but it feels like you've wrung that pretty dry. can you really? They've said that, it may pick up with his daughter and stuff, and or side characters that have appeared in the stories. I don't,
I think that'll
eh,
be a different team. I don't think that'll be
I
Naughty Dog.
don't, I don't think that they really care to revisit. I think they've told that story of like treasure hunting and stuff to its peak,
For sure.
and yeah, I
Would you
don't.
rather would you rather see a new IP or a return to a franchise?
I'm always like a series person, so
Mm.
I would say like yeah, the perfect thing for me would be like a Jack reboot. Would like turn my head and be like, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're polar opposites on the new IP versus series thing. I would if we saw a Naughty Dog logo revealed at this next showcase, which I'm really fucking bummed out about this showcase, mind you, because I put out a damn or I didn't put it out yet. I recorded a video of my PlayStation Showcase predictions on May 12th. It's fucking the 20 something. What is today? The 23rd? 24th today. And
Yeah, 24th.
so it's been 12 days since I made that video because I was the rumors and all that was that the leaks were that it was going to come in May. We were going to get a showcase in May. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Usually they announce these at least 7 days, a 7 day lead up to get people
I
anticipating.
mean, you still have a few more hours left to Friday,
Hey,
and that would still technically be a week.
I'll happily take it. What the fuck was I saying? Oh yeah, but I think it's going to end up being a state of play. I think it's going to be a fucking state of play, dude. And
Yeah.
that is a bummer. A year of no first party releases after a year in 2023 with only one first party release, I think. Um, Spider-Man 2, is there? Whatever. Just definitely a not a lot of content, but I would lose my mind to see a new Naughty Dog logo or a Naughty Dog logo pop up and then see a new IP revealed. I would lose my fucking shit. But I don't think that's going to happen because that's going to be saved for a showcase, and it looks like we're probably getting a
Naughty
state of
Dog
play.
Bloodborne
I will
2.
literally jump into a fucking pond of alligators with meat dangling from my neck. Um, Next up here, speaking of the PS world, new Astro seems to be on the horizon. A new Astrobot game is expected to be announced within the next 15 days, according to Deal Lab slash Bilbicune. Part of the game is set in a desert environment, and one of the new characters is Finnick Fox in the form of a robot, seemingly for PS5 and not PSVR 2. So at least they're giving Astrobot a chance to, make some head waves and actually put out a real game on a real system and maybe make a little bit of money for the first time ever. Um,
Wasn't
so
that the they obviously had the VR games, but they had like the thing
tie-in.
that came pre-installed on the PS5. That was
Yep.
an Astrobot thing. Oh, okay.
Hmm. Yeah, and people were I played a little bit of it. It was pretty fucking sick. But
Mm,
more of a tech demo thing.
yeah.
And but still really, really cool. I hope that this does well. I don't I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's gonna really set the world on fire, unfortunately. I don't think a game with a robot main protagonist is really something that people are gonna gravitate towards, like a Jack or a Sly or a Ratchet or whatever. Just not as much personality,
Especially if
seemingly.
it's fairly platform based and stuff like that. Like it's not Nintendo, man. It's the easiest way of putting it. It's not Nintendo console, so anything platformer related really struggles.
Totally. Yeah. So I guess quick shout out there. Hopefully the showcase comes sooner rather than later. Anything else you wanted to hit on there? I don't have much.
No, I didn't
Yeah.
even know it was in development.
Switch 2 ports seem to be incoming. Nintendo is acquiring Shiver Entertainment from Embracer, the studio behind the Switch's Hogwarts Legacy and MK1 ports. The team will be continuing commissions that port and develop software for multiple platforms, including Nintendo Switch. So right in time for Switch 2. Seems that they're going to go ahead and line up their third party. I don't even know what the word I'm trying to look for is here. Third party porter.
Support. Yeah, the third party sport. They they seem to be a very hit or miss thing because the
MK.
Hogwarts Legacy port was pretty solid, but MK1, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was that was something. I mean, it ran, I suppose, is nice of a thing I could say of it. Uh, it's nice to see Nintendo opening their arms to third party. I think they're finally understanding that, yeah, they get a lot of W's with the first party stuff, but they're leaving so much money on the table by not embracing studios outside of their original ecosystem. So to bring somebody in to solely port their games, because maybe, you know, there may be teams that how successful the Switch is and how many copies, not copy, how many units it shipped, but they may not have the resources themselves to make a Switch port of that game. So this is where I feel like this team will be able to step in and be like, okay, well, we'll be the team to do it, and then we'll just give you a cut of the commission and stuff like that.
Yeah, this kind of makes me think also that the hardware discrepancy might not be too awful between like Switch 2 and, Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. Because if they're investing in this, the only thing is like I hope this isn't for them to port Switch 2 games to Switch 1. You know what I mean? Like I hope this is more about
Oh God, I hope not. That would
yeah.
be a very negative thing for me personally.
Yeah, I hope this is like
Oh God.
100%. Yeah, I just thought about that. I hope this is like 100% geared towards third-party relationships of going, okay, WB, 2K, this, that, and the other. We're going to get your games running on Switch 2 in a somewhat comparable manner to PS5 and Series, at least Series S.
Yeah.
Um, so we shall see. It seems like Embracer's just in the flipping business at this point. They just bought a bunch of shit and they're
They
flipping it.
they gotta make their money back somehow, because by God, the stuff that they've put out surely sure as hell hasn't.
Well, speaking of not making your money back, EA, you know what? We often shit on publishers and corporations and companies, which they definitely deserve to be shat upon. But we do got to give credit where credit is due. EA is diverting 100% of Immortals Avium net sale revenue to Ascendant Studios. The publisher, EA, won't be collecting any revenue from those purchases, with the title going to EA Play or Xbox Game Pass. So, gotta give a little bit of love here to EA for trying to keep a studio alive and, you know,
Mm,
diverting 100% of the sales to Ascendant Studios opposed to just cannibalizing the company.
it's always great when we have topics like this because you have that from a lot less cynical of a mindset. What I'm seeing this that they're not doing it for kindness and stuff. It feels like they know that it wasn't the greatest game, Immortals. It's fairly lackluster, but they clearly have some level of talent there. And if they can keep that studio alive, that's another studio that they can use to bolster Battlefield when it really needs to ramp up production. Because you've seen them have to scoop in Criterion, which you really don't want to be bringing in a racing developer for a first person shooter. You'd much rather have somebody who develops that genre of game doing it. And don't get me wrong, the vehicles in the new Battlefield game weren't too bad, but you want to focus on shooting first and foremost.
To be fair, though, Ascendant Studios isn't owned by EA.
Oh, is it not?
No. So
Uh,
this, yeah, they can't be like, pressured into working on anything unless it was in the deal that they signed right here, where it was like, hey, we'll, we'll divert all the revenue to you. And in turn, would you be willing to do X, Y, and Z for us? That could be it. But
that has to be it because there's no EA don't do things out of the kindness of their heart, you know.
yeah, but I mean, even that's 100% where the studio is still making the decision. Like, there's no real, like, they could totally turn that down. You know what I mean?
I
It's
think if
it.
they turn that down, they'd be dead though. This is their only lifeline. It didn't sell any copies.
Yeah.
Immortals. Like, it was really, really. It's one of the things that we brought up of it had a really inflated budget, which should never have been given to them. Like, I'm sorry for what they wanted to put out. It, that shouldn't have been greenlit.
Yeah. I think they already laid off a bunch of their staff and
Hmm.
shit. Ascendant Studios have. I believe. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I can at least got to give a little bit of credit where it's due. Who knows how it'll end up turning out, but Lord knows that this story the story was not getting covered at all because it's not sensational enough to get clicks and headlines and shit like that. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that when we see stuff like Tango and we see shit like that happening all the time of talented studios just getting shuttered, always at least, worth pointing out a couple good stories when they take place. Who knows how it'll transpire, but at least as of now, it's an independent studio that could have been absolutely cannibalized if EA didn't decide to do what they did. So I guess, EA always gets shit on. We'll give them a quick, or I'll give them a quick shout out here. And next up, fucking ridiculous. Tomb Raider got a limited run physical release. And I saw this pop up. I'm scrolling through Twitter. Instantly bought that bitch. Like 6 hours later, it's announced it's getting a full retail release. Like,
I'm sorry. You need to read the fine print. I'm going to give you a little bit of like a little cheat hack. If it's not a numbered limited run release, it will always hit retail.
oh, really?
Yeah. If it's not a number 431 limited run, it will always be available on like Amazon and stuff.
I've only bought like two or three things ever from Limited Run because usually they don't publish shit that's like super super appealing to me. They seem to be kind of getting into that space where they are publishing bigger, bigger titles. Um, but yeah, it's just so
I learned
it,
that really quick.
it's not the thing to me that's like I don't really care about buying from Limited Run or Best Buy or whoever, but it's just the fact that it's so annoying that I paid $37 when I could pay 32 at Best Buy. And I know who gives a fuck, but it's like, why
You
is it
gotta wait so long on top of that. It
right?
takes so much longer in getting their shit together.
And I really did. I thought about canceling it. I was like, you know, I know that because September is the release date for Best Buy. I know I'll probably be waiting until January, February of 2025 before I get my copy, I would assume.
Mm.
So I was like, but do I really need to play it and fucking do I want to go through all the work of like repurchasing this? I'll just wait till fucking February. I don't really care all that much, but it is a man, it is definitely an annoying business model.
I will give them a little bit of a bone that I throw. Their collector's edition of it looks really good,
Yeah, I'll never
really
buy that
cool.
shit.
I'm never gonna buy it either myself, but it looked pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they had something else that I was really interested in. They just announced as well. So they're definitely they're beginning to get into that space of games where it's like, which is a bummer because 4 or 5 years ago, these games were just like, they're on GameStop store shelves the day that they come out. And now it's like Tomb Raider has to get a limited run physical release. Fucking Tomb Raider? Are you kidding me? That's just it's a bit scary. Bit scary times for physical media.
Yeah, and a bit of flack that I will give them to counter out the good is that I'm not surprised you kind of fell for that trap because they limited printed for only limited run the twin stick Tomb Raider game.
Hmm.
So a lot of people just assumed, okay, well then the classics are also just going to be that. So they then announced that like a week, 2 weeks later, whatever it was. Then they get in them sales, and then it's just like, oh yeah, and it will also be available at like Best Buy and all these other places, and it's just like, ah, that's kind of scummy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it is annoying. I mean, if if it was all rolled out, if the information was all rolled out and available immediately, I understand it would tank the sales of limited run because everybody would rather buy from Best Buy or, one of these companies that they are a little bit more confident in of getting the game on time and this, that, and the other, and not paying as much for shipping. But eh, I don't know. It does seem a bit.
You've got to scroll down so far to get that information because it's like this release is not part of the limited run games collection. Is not a numbered release. They're just distributing this on behalf of Aspire, but that's buried so deep. That should
Yeah,
be made a lot more obvious. So,
right.
yeah.
And I wouldn't even if I read that, I wouldn't even know what that meant because I don't follow limited run at all. Like I have no knowledge of anything limited run. I don't know what a limited run collect like I don't know what any of that shit is. So to me it was
Yep.
just that would just be like a something I saw and I was like, "Oh, okay. That
Well, there you go. To educate everybody, if it has the little circle stamp with a number, that means that it's only for them, I believe. You can only get it through limited run. If you're looking at the picture and it doesn't have the stamp, most likely it means that other retailers have the option of distributing it as well.
I'm trying to think there was another guy fuck it. It ain't gonna come to me, but there's another big
Blood
game.
Dragon was given a physical release, which I ordered.
Far Cry?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one and there was one I believe by fuck it. I'm never gonna be able to
The
remember this shit.
newest thing that dropped was Animal Well. Is that
Oh damn, I didn't Indica. No, no,
Indika?
no.
Okay.
Indica was VGP, I think. I believe. Regardless, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
I don't see.
Um
There's so many.
yeah, they're popping up all over the damn place, which is cool. I'm glad that we still have these outlets who support physical media and get, more obscure games out to people in the physical format. But speaking of Indica, I think that's all we have down for the news. Yeah. I did play and finish Indica. Very much, I guess, adventure game week for me. It's about 3 hours and 30 minutes to get through it.
Really that
Um,
short?
yeah, it's pretty short, super
Oof.
short. $30 though, super cheap. 3 hours for $30. That's fine with me.
Mm.
Um, Game is pretty much all just walking, solving a quick little puzzle here and there. Its humor is really, really underrated. It's a very, very funny game. And that's the thing, whenever you see the setup, it looks like a horror game, but it doesn't really present itself as such in the game at all. Like it doesn't have many moments, if any moments, that I find really scary. You do have the devil, or presumably the devil, in your head talking to you kind of in the same way that Senua has the voices in her head. And you do have some moments where you're seeing like some hallucinations take place, things popping out of nuns' mouths, and so there's some little body horror elements thrown in there. But yeah, you're playing as a nun. Her name is Indika, and it's a journey kind of all about wrestling with her religious beliefs. And or I should say for the early part, like the opening hour and a half or so, it's really all about wrestling with her religious beliefs and seeing how she's being shunned and mistreated by the community of nuns that she's a part of. And then about 2 hours or so into the game, it really picks up and becomes something more than that, more of like an escape story, we'll say, of sorts. And it so they have moments in here where it'll go to like a 2D game and you'll be doing like side scrolling NES style platforming, and it conveys it provides backstory to why Indica may be the way that she is now, some of the things she's experienced, because you're playing as a little girl, like a little 2D, girl jumping around. And that's sort of conveying the backstory of her when she was a child and some of the experiences that she went through that kind of fucked up her brain. Um, it's definitely 100 times more interesting than Hellblade. It's less mechanically involved than Hellblade. Like there's no combat or anything like that. But in terms of having a specific vision and just nailing it and cutting out pretty much all the fat, all the filler, Indica definitely succeeds in that where I feel like Hellblade really falters. So yeah, it's a a good game. It's definitely one that if you are a religious person, like deeply religious, and you don't like your beliefs being questioned at all, I would maybe eh, I shouldn't say I would advise against playing it because am somewhat I have some sort of I'm not like overly religious, but I'm definitely not atheist. I feel like that's kind of, everybody can be whatever the fuck they want to be, but to be so dogmatic in their belief of like there's nothing at all, I'm certain of it. Like I'll never be confident enough to say I'm certain of anything. Like I have no idea what the fuck anything is. So I I'm kind of the wrong person to go to for saying, you know, because for me, I don't like question away. You can question anything with me. And I'm like, I think that questioning
Yeah.
something further makes me investigate and come up with a better answer in my own head.
Yeah, some people it's a very touchy subject because I saw some clips of a TV show that some people claim to be really hilarious, where it had like religious themes, and other people like really offended that they would even touch it. So it's definitely like a it's so hard to judge that. It's because it's down to somebody's personal beliefs to such a deep level where they would have to try it out themselves to know whether or not it steps on their toes.
Totally. Yeah, and it never really like insults God or anything. It more so insults the idea of like religious manipulation, stuff like that, which I think that it's like everybody's aware of that. Everybody's certain that that happens, you know what I mean? Manipulating people on a level uh to rather to profit more or to instill fear, that way that you're more prone to returning to these ceremonies or these assemblies, these church endeavors, because that's the way you think you're going to find salvation. But in doing so, you end up giving them more and more and more money, and it's like, yeah, of course, there's manipulation in anything where profit's involved. Um, so I don't think it really hits on any message that most people should be thinking about this regardless. Like it's never insulting to God in and of itself. It's more just insulting the idea of religion. And yeah, great production value, solid cutscenes, really good checkpoints. So anytime that you fail or whatever in your 2D sections, that was something I was worried about. I was like, oh God, the first time I failed and then I booted right back up. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, cool. We'll breeze through this little thing. And it also has some decent commentary about the silliness of video games, which I love, like upgrading trees and shit that don't really matter at all. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So it's nice tongue in cheek. It does a really good job of being funny, being a little bit spooky, but it's nothing about this game is like off-putting to me. Even, talking about Hellblade of being so mechanically dry. This is more so dry mechanically, but it's still like we were talking about earlier. This just, for whatever reason, is more engaging throughout the entire experience. So, yeah,
It just shows the importance of like good writing.
totally. Yeah, and the writing's excellent in this. It's really, really good. Really good. So, shout out to Indika. I'd give that around a 7.3, 7.4, something like that. Real solid game. But what have you been playing, Luke?
Um, Dipped in and out. Hellblade kind of, I won't lie. You know, last time I mentioned it, it kind of hit the wind out of my sails for wanting to play really anything. I've been kind of in like your slump as well, being like, ugh. So before Hellblade, I ended up because it's been a month now, maybe more. Probably more than that now that I think about it. Since the Fallout show dropped, right?
Yeah,
It's
probably.
been a decent amount of time now.
Yeah.
So jumped in when they did that next gen update. It started off okay, and then it completely just stopped working. Textures not loading, and then they finally patched it. And yeah, just went through and finished 100% in the whole list.
Nice. So you got
Didn't
the
do any side content. I just because I'd done that initially when the game first came out. I dived into tons of stuff, collecting stuff, clearing locations. I just booted up like a roadmap achievement roadmap thing and just what do I need to do, focused on that and just ticked it all off. So yeah.
Nice,
And
dude.
two achievements were in that game
Oh, really?
really badly. Yeah, it has one in the base list for doing getting 100% happiness in a large settlement. So fucking finicky and
Mm,
takes so long. Like you about 3 hours of idling. Not even joking. 3 hours of
Jesus.
just having to constantly go to sleep, wake up, walk around like the settlement thing, make sure it's ticking up that you're doing the right thing and doing that. And then the other one was in the Nuka World DLC. You had to get 100,000 tickets redeemed. And you play through the DLCs, and when you open up like trash cans and stuff, you can have between like 5 and 30 of them drop. So you're like, oh, that's not too bad, you know. Maybe the DLC will be long enough. By the time I finished the DLC, I had about 2,000 of them naturally accumulated. I then had to go to like this little shooting gallery thing and redeem a ticket, and then you shoot the targets, and then you get between 800 and 1,000 tickets, and it takes so long for it to spit it out, and you had to do that on repeat to get to 100,000. So that was like another
Jesus
two.
Christ.
That was about another 2 hours of doing that. So yeah, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, dude.
That's what achievements do to you
I
sometimes.
I should have brought that up. Indika has some dumbass achievements too that like it's easy to unlock them. So I don't mean in the same way where it's like super tedious, but it just totally distracts you from the game. Because I went and looked at them and then I was thinking about trying to do them. I was like, this is going to totally distract me from the experience of the story and all that. So I just ended up not doing it. And you don't like it's one of those games where you don't get any achievement for finishing the game or anything. It's such a fucking bummer. I think that should be like the standard. Give
Yeah,
me even a 50 gamer score, 100 gamer score, whatever. Just
just anything, just any amount of gamer score as long as it's just you finish the story because
yeah.
that's criminal not having that.
I think that should be what Nintendo does. Just like no real achievements, just finish the game. You get a check because we know they don't want to go through all the effort of actually like incorporating full achievements. So just like you rolled credits, you get a check for rolling the credits. I think you might actually even brought that up a while ago when we were talking about it. I think yeah, I think that's fine.
Hmm. Yeah, keeping it simple. But
Absolutely.
that was the only two things that I finished. I've jumped into Ori and the Will of the Wisps last
Nice.
night. So I'm about I'd played about 2 hours of it and then put it down for whatever reason. I only put about 30 minutes into it because a game called Xdefiant launched,
Hmm.
Ubisoft's new like first person shooter thing, and I've been itching to like have some multiplayer game again. Sometimes you just get that like itch, and
Totally.
thankfully it's really, really, really solid. Really
Nice.
solid. It launched and it was just like really Ubisoft. I got into one match and then for 2 hours you couldn't match make. And it was just like you come on guys. And then thankfully since then it's been out for about 3 to 4 days now and it's just been smooth sailing. Solid. There's no connection issues. There's no just feels really good and strong to play. It's kind of astonishing that Ubisoft was able to get it working that quickly, other than that
Such
first
a
little wobble.
Ubisoft, they're firing on all cylinders. They got a big 2024 ahead of them. That's all
Uh,
you've been playing? Go.
yeah, but it's also really interesting because it's like a multiverses kind of thing, multiverse thing. They're pulling from all of their IPs.
Oh wow.
So all of the factions are in this, like the Division, Rainbow Six, and everything. The thing that I kind of noticed as well is that the maps are also, it pops up when it's like a Ubisoft IP map. They've got the fourth echelon headquarters as a map. So it's a built thing. We know Splinter Cell is in the works.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a lot closer to being finished than a lot of people think because this is all running on their own engine, this first person shooter. These assets are already built, and these other things that they pulled from like the Far Cry maps, that's pulled straight from Far Cry 6 and just ported into this game. All of these maps that are from, they're all from Ubisoft games. So that tells me that that's a lot further along than people probably think.
Summer Game Fest reveal question mark?
Mm, I think so.
That'd be fucking awesome. That would be awesome. So that's all you've been playing, man?
Yep.
Perfect, perfect. All right. Well, that is it for this week's show. We appreciate you good people for tuning in. I do want to say, I mentioned this earlier. I was waiting on that damn showcase announcement. I was going to drop the showcase predictions. I was like certain that was going to be this week, but I do have the video Loon and I recorded last week where we went over and we built some dream collaborations from our favorite developers, what games we would like to see them working on. I have that in the works, editing that up. Last week was really fucking packed with work, and then when I wasn't working, I was trying to finish up Hellblade 2 and trying to finish up Indika, which I know, people are like, that's not fucking. I mean, all together, what is that? 6 hours, 9 hours of gaming. So I understand it's not a lot, but on top of, real life work, trying to get that done, trying to edit everything up. I do have that PlayStation Showcase video totally edited up. So whenever they announce a damn showcase, I can drop it. But that's the thing is if they announce a state of play and not a showcase, what the fuck? I I don't even know if I'm not going to predict a state of play. I don't think. We know that what state of plays are. They're usually nothing other than the time RE4 got revealed there in Street Fighter 6. So,
Yeah, maybe you could go in and like alter like the intro thing and be like, if this wasn't a state of play, this is what I would have hoped for, maybe
yeah.
to try and salvage it a bit.
That's
That's
the
a
thing.
lot of effort.
Yeah, I already got that bitch uploaded though. Like it's
Yeah,
just sitting there uploaded. I'll put in a thing right here so you can see it. It's a 47-minute video. Got all the gameplay in there. I should have just released it. I shouldn't have fucking waited. I should have just released it.
you put
I'm
your
pr
faith in Sony in a
golly.
year where they're dropping the ball.
Put my faith in Jeff Grubb. This damn leaks. Um But yeah, man, and no, obviously I'm just fucking around there. I don't really care one way or the other. And I'm sure that because I think he said a big PlayStation event. I don't even think he said a showcase. So don't want to tarnish his reputation too much there by providing misinformation as the people would say. Balloon, appreciate you for joining me today, man. And we shall be back at you with another episode soon. Goodbye.